Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kideshenu b'mitzvotav v'tzvoveinu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with thy commandments and commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of the Torah. Hallelujah. Shabbat Shalom. This week's Torah portion is Re'ah, and Re'ah means see. This week's Torah portion really stood out to me this week for two reasons. One, he shows us that there's blessings and curses. And then he also talks about the kosher laws, things you're supposed to eat, you're not supposed to eat. A mountain that they'll bless and a mountain that they'll curse. You know, it's incredible because we know many times before you can hear something, many times before you can smell something, many times before you can sense something, you can see it. He says, see. Also, it's like you've heard the expression before, the eyes are the windows to the soul. What really stood out to me in this week's Torah portion, when he says, see that I set before you today a blessing and curse, was how it really permeated everything. The fact that we have a choice to open our eyes, we have a choice to see what's going on around us, and to make a choice to choose to do good, to choose life, or to choose to do evil, to choose death. The second thing that really stood out to me is that with the kosher animals is the fact that it's kind of a difficult thing. In one of the verses, it's not, you can believe like a child and understand, and we know now that these animals that were written down in these commandments thousands of years ago are unclean, super unhealthy, and one of the first things your doctor today in America or anywhere in the world will tell you is stop eating those foods. What was incredible is that there was one commandment in the Bible where it says you're not supposed to mix meat and cheese. Don't boil a child in his mother's milk. And so, how do we get to that point? And I thought it was amazing because we know that in choosing, in seeing things, in understanding what's right and what's wrong, we know that it first becomes this thought in our mind, right? We can see this thing, and then we think about it, and then it affects our will, and then we have a certain level of passion if we don't become tempered, and then our passion and our will and our thoughts become a deed, and the deed becomes an act, and it can affect our everyday life. You've ever heard somebody say before that's been alive for so many years, they say, it's like chewing bubble gum, pretty soon it'll just lose its flavor. And then you just chew and chew and chew and chew and chew every day. But if in your life you always see, you always look, and you always think, and you always have this will, and you always bring it to your will and to your passions, and you make a choice, and that act becomes something every day where it's not always just you're going along and going through the motions, but even going through the motions, those acts, it becomes extremely important and extremely deep and extremely insightful and extremely connected to God. Then you realize this is not just a simple, easy thing. You're just going through the motions, that this is not just something that's nil, but everything that we do, there's life and there's death. So now on a very base level, you said, well, what is this? Is this kind of an ideal thing? Is this an ideal? Or is this is this, how detailed can you get with this thing? Well, ideally, when you think about it, originally we didn't eat animals, but then we could eat animals. But now that we can eat animals, we should look at this thing and we should understand, would you really boil a child in his mother's milk? Would you really boil a little cow in his mother's milk? Meaning, would you take something that's life And would you mix it with something that's death? See, this was not the original purpose of the thing. Are you so discerning that you can look at something as so mundane in so many people's lives? They go on about their lives, they live their lives, they don't have that understanding of God in their life. That oneness, that connectedness with God, and knowing God, is trying to find out what God's thoughts is, ideally, and then what's thought is the thought of God in our own lives, that interconnectedness, and to understand even those things that we think is mundane, to see the holy in the higher level. Do you really do you mix life and death? Do you really mix the profane with the holy? Do you really boil a child in its mother's milk? So it's so incredible that God just doesn't set before us life and death. Aren't we already living and dying? But God sets before us His Word, His life, His ideals, and our ability to exercise, and the ability to discern, and the ability to understand, and the ability to get closer and to live a more fulfilled life in every single thing that we do because of His Word, and because of His love, because of His promise, because of His covenants, that everything that we see in life is a picture of the one true living God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our Father. Hallelujah. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov, peace. Amen, huh? Peace.